Hello and welcome to the show the podcast community is calling Access Involvement. I'm Billy Ferris and I'm joined every week by a staff member from the student involvement team. Today, it is Alonzo Cee, coordinator for leadership programs. Alonzo, how's it going?
It's going well, Billy. How you doing?
Doing good. Happy to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And I want the audience to get to know you super well, so we're going to start with our first segment right off the top here, and that segment is called Pop Quiz. We're going to ask you 7 rapid-fire questions, and you are going to answer them any way you want. There are no rules, as we've explained on the past episode, so answer however you want. And why not? I'm going to answer some, too. So we'll see how it goes.
As you said, there are no rules.
Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
I'm so glad. Number 1, if there was a movie about your life, who would play you?
Oof. I think I would have Trevor Noah play me. I think we have vastly different experiences, yet so many similarities between just how many different identities we hold, and also the fact that we've lived in so many different places. And also, he is one of many accents, and that is one thing that I love about him. He's also hilarious, so I think I would want Trevor Noah to play me.
I'm jealous. You said so many accents. I'm jealous because I'm from Boston, and I can't do a Boston accent.
I'm from New York, and I can't do a New York accent because
I'm terrible at accents.
No.
That is what it is.
I'm from the Bronx. That's not.
Oh, we'll get to that.
That's not how we do. Oh,
we'll get to that.
I really don't. I don't want to do it.
He's from New York. I'm from Boston. Those cities get along great. They get along great. It's fine.
I'm from the Bronx.
But I would be torn between playing myself just for the payday that comes with being in a movie.
Just for the banter.
In my mind, that's a big hit. It's clearly a straight to VHS release, that people wouldn't even buy anymore if it was a movie about my life.
No, it would go to Amazon.
Amazon, that's a deal.
or no, Twitch. You're on Twitch.
Twitch. And then, but really, I think I would have James Roday Rodriguez play me. He played Sean Spencer in Psych, and he plays Gary Mendez on A Million Little Things. And those are 2 of my favorite TV characters of all time. So I know he can play the character, so that's good.
The character that is you?
Yes.
Okay.
I feel like, what are you saying?
Are you a character?
I don't know.
Do you feel like you are a character?
I mean, this is about him, not me. So we're gonna get back.
Let me switch it up on you.
No one knows the rules of the podcast. I'm looking at my producer over here. Everyone tries to take over. I ask the questions. It's my show.
But you said there are no rules.
That's the same thing Amy said when she was here, and I don't have a response to that. So we're gonna go to number 2. I don't like the way this is going. If you could take one thing out of the world, what would it be? But the caveat is it has to be a physical thing. It's it can't be a concept.
Do you mean by taking out as in take out and
it would no longer exist?
It would no longer exist?
Yeah, but it has to be a tangible thing. It can't be a concept. There is a right answer.
People are going to hate me for this. Musicals.
What? Why?
Being from New York City, I was never the biggest fan of musicals.
Are you from New York?
No, I'm not. I was never. I don't know why. It's just I don't have a deep affinity to musicals, and I know people are gonna hate me for it, but I could deal with that.
I just feel like if that's not your thing, it's easy to avoid. Also, that means no Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and I don't know how I feel.
I'm okay with that.
I'm not okay with that.
I had to play Grandpa in 4th grade.
Interesting.
And someone tripped me. So.
So that's where the hate comes from.
Yeah,
the
hate.
Okay.
That's where the hate comes from.
The answer is snakes. I would take snakes out of the world.
Scorpions.
They just look like
Scorpions.
They just look like they're trying to get me.
Scorpions.
I don't like them. Number 3. What's your dream vacation spot?
That's funny because we talked about it this morning.
We did talk about that.
We talked about vacations this morning. Mm-hmm. I think I would want to go back to Costa Rica. There was this specific place that had it had a volcano next to it, and the volcano powered the hot springs in Costa Rica, and I just thought Costa Rica was an amazing place. And I think there's a difference between visiting places when you're younger versus visiting places when you're older.
Yeah.
I felt the same way about Disney World. When I was young, you have a different feeling about it and a different way you walk through it as an adult than you would as a child. So I think Costa Rica would be my answer.
Agreed. My answer is the moon. That's my dream vacation spot.
How are you getting there?
I'm good. It's my dream. Alonzo, I'll go to sleep at night.
Are you going to go to the dark side of the moon? There is no dark side of the moon.
But yeah, the moon. It's a dream vacation spot. I'm going to dream big. I'm going to go to the moon, and that'd be a cool story.
How much is that going to cost?
It's a dream. It's free. In my dream, that's a free
Okay.
trip. So, number 4.
Mm-hmm.
If you could have a lot of judgment coming from you, by the way.
I'm all judgmental.
Judgmental. Number 4. I love the concept of a walk-up song. For those that don't know, a walk-up song, like when a batter's coming up to bat in baseball, they'll play a song for them. Some people call it entrance music. I'm a big fan of that concept and like routinely wish that like we had entrance music or walk-up songs that played when we walked into the building or walked into a meeting. What would your walk-up song be?
So it has to be from New York, and it has to be hip hop for me. I have 2 in mind. One is my all-time favorite song by Biggie, Juicy. That is probably one that I would say would definitely be my walk-up song. The other one would be Public Service Announcement by Jay-Z, because that is just hype to walk up to.
You may not know this. Public Service Announcement is Tom Brady's walk-up song when he goes onto the field to warm up. So I'm a big fan. You're welcome.
I feel some type of way about that answer now.
It's, he's pretty great. So mine, Loud and Heavy by Cody Jinks. I think I'm going to guess you're not super familiar with that song given the conversations we've had in the past, but I think it's like the ultimate walk-up song.
Okay.
It would get the crowd going.
I feel like I've heard it before. I feel like people
It hits.
use it.
It hits. It's good. Number 5. What is something most people seem to love, but you don't like at all?
I mean, I could have used musicals from beforehand. I'm going to use something else. I've talked about this with my old supervisor before. I'm not a big fan of the deification or infatuation with Beyonce.
Okay.
I don't like the deification of any person, but it just makes the Beehive very unattractive to me. Okay. Just like putting her up on a pedestal. So I would say that's something that I would say a lot of people love that I'm just like, eh.
All right.
What would you say for you?
Oh, for me, ranch dressing.
Oh, that's also super overrated.
Okay, I'm really kind of aggressive about this one because when I get wings at a place, I'm like, do you want ranch or blue cheese? I'll be like, oh, I wouldn't like either. No thanks. And then always there's a cup of ranch that comes, it's like spilling over onto the wings, and I don't like ranch.
Like,
I'm
no,
like,
I don't
the
want
wings
this.
kind of ruined. I'm like, I didn't want this. This is wasteful. And now you're forcing ranch on me. People force ranch on you when you don't like it.
Yep.
And it is the worst.
Also,
I don't like it.
Also, I didn't know that people ate ranch or used ranch to eat pizza until I moved to North Carolina.
As an Italian, I don't appreciate that. I do not appreciate that.
I don't.
Producer does not approve of my hate for ranch. Does approve of my hate for ranch on pizza.
I just don't understand it.
Didn't even have to turn the mic on. Number 6. Would you rather speak all languages fluently or be able to talk with animals and understand them?
This is an easy one for me because my mom speaks 6 languages. So I would love to speak all languages fluently. The amount of connection you would be able to have with people from different places. I mean, yes, being able to talk to animals would be cool. I don't know if it would be as cool as we think it would be. I would love to be able to just talk with all people or be able to understand what everyone is saying at all times.
I'm the opposite. I want to be able to talk to animals. I want to know like specifically what penguins are thinking. And I can't even tell you why I want to know what penguins are thinking. I just want to know what penguins are thinking.
I want to know what bears are thinking.
I was like walking around.
I want to know what bears are thinking just because of the conversations we've had about bears.
Bear, if you see a bear, you're in trouble. But like, I think bears are thinking food. I think that's what bears are thinking.
And I still think I can run away from bears.
It really depends on if you're faster than the person you're with, and we'll leave it at that. Number 7. If you could have any job for one day, what would it be?
I think I would want to be a baseball player for a day. It's a dream. It's always been a dream.
Okay.
I always think about like what my career could have been. I would want to live it out for a day, just to see what it's like.
I want to be the president for a day. just fix everything and then just ride off into the sunset.
Be like, I did my job.
I did my job. I got everyone to get along.
Somewhat.
I'm gonna walk out, but I want to read like all the secret documents and find out all that stuff. That'd be pretty cool.
Area 51.
Area 51. You know that. I mean, really, I don't think that's much of a mystery now that Google Satellite is a thing. But still, president for a day, you'd find out all the cool stuff and then realize like, okay, is this job as hard as everyone says it is? Probably it is.
Probably.
But I would like to find out for one day, but no more than one day.
You're not going to make everyone happy.
No, that would be the challenge, wouldn't it? I will try to make everyone happy, and it would make me the worst president of all time.
And you're going to be so
even if
frustrated.
it was just one day.
You're going to be so frustrated afterwards.
Okay, well, that was Pop Quiz. Happy to say you passed. There are no grades, so everyone passes.
Barely.
But you did answer every question. That's all it takes.
Nah, I failed.
And we're now going to get into our next segment called Let's Get Personal, where we are going to learn more about you and how you got here. We'll get into what you do here in student involvement later, but this is all about your journey to here.
Okay.
So as we always do, we're going to start with the start. Where were you born? Where are you from?
All right, yeah.
We've already said this like 4 times.
I know. I'm from New York.
He never mentions it.
I know. So I was born and raised in New York City. Funny thing is, neither of my parents are from New York. My mom's from Switzerland. My dad's from Cincinnati, Ohio. But they, ended up moving to New York, and I lived there for the first 18 years of my life. Born and raised in Harlem. I rep New York a lot in what I do, what I say, how I think. So that is where I'm from. Was there a second part to that question?
Oh, just where were you born? Where are you from?
Oh, yeah,
so
that's
second
where I'm
part coming now. Like, what was it like growing up there?
It was definitely interesting. So I mean, growing up in Harlem, it's predominantly black neighborhood. Obviously, there's been some gentrification as of recent, but I went to a predominantly white school and then played on baseball teams that were predominantly Hispanic, predominantly Puerto Rican and Dominican. So I always was maneuvering different spaces and, living in a black space, going to school in a predominantly white space, and then playing baseball with folks who spoke a lot of Spanish, and also being in a household that speaks a lot of languages. So I learned at a very early age that, one, not everyone's the same, but also that not everyone acts the same. So being able to act different in different spaces, you could say that I code switch very well.
So, I mean, that's to be expected from New York. You grew up around a lot of different people, different ethnicities, different backgrounds. So I'm assuming coming from New York, you said you were exposed to so many different people. How did that kind of shape your worldview as you were looking into going to college and moving from New York?
Yeah, I actually didn't want to stay in New York. I think that was more of a product of me wanting to explore and see where folks were coming from. I mean, everyone wants to come to New York, but you don't necessarily hear about folks wanting to leave. And now I come in it with the mindset of I can go to visit New York, but living there is a different experience, and I've done that I did that for 18 years. So for me, thinking about what I wanted to do after being in New York, I wanted a different experience, and I wanted to be somewhere else and try to learn a different way of living, because New York is completely different. It's all go, go, go. The positive, you have everything at your fingertips. You have a lot of resources, a lot of places to eat, but, just living differently. So, wanted to go somewhere else. So
when you were there, did you want to go into higher education for a career growing up, or were there other things you wanted to do? I know you said baseball player. But.
Yeah. I think I grew up, the first 16 years of my life, I thought I was going to end up being a baseball player. What happened after my career ended, I had no clue. But my initial thought was being a baseball player, and that is what I wanted to be. And then, when I got injured, I had no clue what I was going to do, but college was still an option. I would tell you now, thinking back to who I was then, at 16, I didn't think I was going to college.
You thought you were going straight to go into baseball.
Mm-hmm.
In a different world and 4 shoulders that were healthier, we could have been a pitcher-catcher duo.
I know, and that's really weird to think about.
Just 4 injured shoulders. That's the only thing that stopped that from happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just don't research that.
Don't go into it.
Don't research that. Where did you go to college?
So I went to college, both undergrad and grad school, in Elon, North Carolina, at Elon University, which is in the middle of nowhere, North Carolina, between Greensboro and Raleigh-Durham, for anyone wondering where that university is. But I was actually recruited to play there, and then when I got injured, was trying to figure out, what am I doing? But,
So that must have been a pretty big shock going from New York to middle of nowhere, North Carolina, where Elon is. What was that like? Was that culture shock, and how did you kind of adjust to that?
The first thing I experienced that I knew I was in a different space was, you have random folks coming up to you being like, "Hey, how are you doing? I hope you're having a great day." And me being the New Yorker, I'm just like, "Why is this random stranger coming up to me?"
Head down, keep moving.
Yeah, and people came up to me all the time at Elon, and I would walk to class with my headphones on, with my Beats on, and I would just be jamming. and walk into class, and folks would be like, Alonzo, you didn't see me as you walked past me. I was just like, well, I wasn't trying to pay attention to anyone. I was just trying to go to class.
That was big for me too. I moved down from Boston to Atlanta when I was 8, so it was younger. But like I think like people at school thought I was kind of rude for the beginning because like I didn't say hey every time I passed them in the hall. I'm like, I said hello this morning. Like I don't need to say hey every time I pass you. And that's the thing. So like that was kind of culture shock. And then did the use of the word Coke get you too? Because like if I wanted a Pepsi or a Coke or a Sprite, I would say the one I wanted. But it was like the first time we ever went out to eat. It was at a McDonald's on our way down here. And I said, like, can I get a Coke? And, like, what kind? And 8-year-old Billy did not know how to answer that question. I was like,
I don't think I ever
You
really...
didn't experience that?
I didn't have experienced that too much. I think more so... Because also Elon is different. I feel like it's a bubble in a bubble. So, like, I got to experience the North Carolina bubble, but also Elon, as a university, has an influx of students from the Northeast. So, folks with a lot of similar experiences, especially from bigger cities. So... thinking about DC, Boston, New York, and other big areas, you know, there are folks coming there with similar experiences. So I think I got to experience a lot of folks from a lot of different places there as well, but also getting to experience, you know, different cities and spaces in North Carolina.
so were you an involved student at school, or were you go to class, go home, go to class, go home? Did you get involved?
That is a funny question.
Thank you. I like funny questions. So thank you.
I was an overly involved student. I wanted to be a part of and know everyone. I think my experience from high school and my experience from college are completely separate in that, you know, high school, I just wanted to get by. And then college, I wanted to create who I was. So I just wanted to, like, get to know people and be known. So I, you know, played club baseball. I got involved in the Black Student Union. I joined my fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha. Was vice president of my chapter. Was MPHC president. Was a part of many different task forces and committees. So like I think I was overly involved, and I took my involvement more seriously than my academics while I was an undergrad. I was still a good student, but my emphasis was on my development outside of the classroom more so than inside the classroom.
And I think that's, as advisors that we both are, I think that's one of those challenges we have is having dedicated students is great, but also making sure they're like, don't skip class for this.
Yeah.
Go to class, make sure you get your studies done because you can't be here if you don't. I think that's always one of those things that as students, I think like I also was like that, where if I had a choice, sometimes I probably spent a little bit less time studying and more time being involved, where now I'm like, I'm not going to let people do that. As much as I can stop that from happening now.
And also getting you don't have to get a 4.0 to be a good student. I think there's a misconception where it's like, in order to be a good student, you have to get the highest grade possible, when in reality, your learning can exist at a B average.
Right, and I think that's where I thought when I was in school, everyone had a 3.0 or better, and it turns out that is not the case.
No.
But really, and I think also with education, a lot of people are very focused on grades, and grades are important. You want to get good grades and keep your GPA to where it needs to be to do the things you want to do, but that's not always the best measure of learning. Like there are some classes I got A's in where I didn't learn as much as classes I got B's in. And that has to do with the amount of studying, but also has to do with the teaching style. Sometimes it just meshes better, but it was a harder test.
Yeah. And actually, like my GPA was actually higher in classes outside of my major than it was inside my major by an entire point.
And what was your major?
Statistics.
Statistics. Okay.
With a minor in sport management.
Okay. That makes sense. If you could go back to day one of college, knowing then what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
I'm big on not having regrets, because you are the person you are because of your experiences. So I would love to enlighten myself of the experiences that you're going to have and things that you may want to be aware of, but I don't want it to impact like how they go about their time in college, because I love the person who I am today because of my experiences. So I would want, you know, first year me in college to experience it very similarly.
Okay. So you would just go back and observe. You wouldn't go back and like alter anything.
No, not alter too much. I would want them to do the same.
Gotcha.
Even like through all the ups and downs
So you just go back and be like, you got this, buddy.
Yeah, you got
Yeah,
this. Like,
got
you're
this.
going to be great. And then just
You
observe.
get
And then, like,
this.
for the nostalgia, just be there and observe and be like, oh, this is what it was like. Like, oh, this is weird.
Yeah.
You
Oh, it'd
know?
be fun to go back for a day just to like remember
Ugh.
how different it was. But just a day.
I don't know if I would want that.
Just a day.
Just a day?
I'm
Okay.
big on like one day. That's like the full circle thing. here.
Okay.
We'll just see how many things we can do in one day. What's something away from work that you like to do?
Oof. I'm a big gamer. I love video games and that has never stopped. I think again in relation to some of the things that I enjoy. So Star Wars, Marvel, sports. So I play a lot of FIFA. Love soccer to death. So I'm a big gamer. I think it allows me to like rejuvenate and be by myself and just do something a little bit mindless. Outside of that, I love to cook. I love to bake. Love making a good gumbo recipe. But yeah, there are a bunch of different things. I love just being out and enjoying people and getting a chance to talk to different people. So whenever I can get a chance to be with folks and to be social, I also enjoy that. So I would say like I'm sort of an ambivert in that I enjoy socialization and like socializing and being social, but I also enjoy my free time more so. And I think COVID had a little bit to do with that. I had to relearn how to enjoy being by myself. So it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, that was a culture shock for me because I'm like very much an extrovert. So that like lockdown, living by myself for COVID was like, well, where do I get my energy from now? And it was like rediscovering ways to get energy without like taking it from other people, which is what extroverts do. So that was interesting.
So it's like what did I do when I wasn't with people? How do I give myself joy? It's like how do I be joyful without being around people?
Right, because that's where. Or for extroverts, that's where it comes from.
Yeah.
Yes, that was a big adjustment. You pretty much just finished up your first year at Auburn. So without getting too much into your job, because we'll again do that later. How's your first year been?
Yeah, it's been weird.
Weird is probably the most accurate word given 2020.
Yeah, I think the job's had its ups and downs, but I think it's all been a product of just the time and space that I started in. When I accepted the job versus and then moving into I accepted the job before COVID started, and I think my headspace was different then, and then moving into COVID being like, okay, will I even have a job because of COVID?
Right.
How am I going to get there? How is all of this going to work? And then actually starting and thinking about, how am I going to interact with students through COVID? How was I going to impact students through COVID? And thinking about all the obstacles that existed. But also thinking about how we overcame all the obstacles and how, in a lot of ways, we're still learning from this past year's experience and thinking about the best ways that we can still have impact. I think it's been both up and down and a very unique and weird experience.
Yep, and that will be a good place to leave. Let's get personal, and we'll get into professional in a little bit. But first, it's time for midterms.
Oof,
Term everyone loves. So
I didn't study for my midterms.
I am going to ask you. Our producer just perked up over here. I'm going to ask you 10 questions that I've designed especially for you, and I'm going to keep standings week after week, and we're going to crown a student involvement trivia champion. Now, our current standings, Amy is in the lead with 5. Review board, it might go down to 4. We don't know. We're waiting on the review. There was an incident we're looking into. Go back and watch the first episode for that.
Is this going to be a Deflategate situation?
No, this is real. So this is real. And not a farce like Deflategate. I'm just waiting on the board. So I'm just waiting on the trivia board to rule on that. But right now, Amy's in the lead with 5 with an asterisk because it could be 4. And Dana is in a second place with 2.
Okay.
And you're third right now. So whatever you do, you're gonna be holding a podium spot today.
Big goose egg right now.
You're gonna be holding a podium spot today because you're the third person to go, regardless of how you do. Now, I did design these to be hard, so don't feel bad if you don't get a lot right.
You wouldn't be you if you didn't.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Number 1. What year did the New York Stock Exchange first open?
Oh, my God.
And I'm going to ask the producer to keep track of how many he gets right. You are from New York, so I thought maybe this is...
I probably did learn it at one point. that level of knowledge about New York history has since faded. Oh, I'm going to say 1910.
1792.
Whew.
That was shockingly early.
Yeah.
Yeah, shockingly early. Number 2. We're going to say just missed. Number 2, you went to school in North Carolina.
Uh-huh.
Over half of this food product sold in the United States was grown in North Carolina. This is multiple choice. Over half of, so like this food product, over half of all of it sold in the United States, grown in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
A, sweet potatoes. B, apples. C, peanuts. Or D, soybeans.
Can you repeat
Yes.
the answers?
Sweet potatoes, apples, peanuts, soybeans.
I'm going to say apples.
It is sweet potatoes, which I never would have thought. I never would have thought sweet potatoes.
I was between sweet potatoes and apples, and I was just like, I didn't learn this.
We'll just say this is a pitcher's duel so far.
Nah, I'm 0 for 2.
And
I'm still in the race, you know.
That's okay. You're still in the race. Number 3. How many seats does Auburn's baseball field have? And I'm going to say if you can get within 10, I'll give you the credit. I'm getting a death stare from the producer. Within 10 seats, I'll give you credit. Is that because I'm being too lenient or too generous? No answer. Everyone's a critic.
I'm going to say 2,600. I don't know.
4,096.
Cool.
Number 4, you're a Marvel fan, you mentioned.
Here we go.
He perks up for Marvel. Which non-Avengers Marvel movie, so not Avengers Infinity War,
Yeah.
Civil War.
None of them that have Avengers.
None of them that
name.
are Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
Even I'm counting Captain America Civil War as an Avengers movie.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So none of, because they're all in it.
They're all in it.
So none of that Avengers kind of 4-5 movie arc.
So does it have to be a part of the MCU?
It doesn't.
Okay.
I will tell you. I'll give you the hint that it is.
Okay.
Which non-Avengers Marvel movie
Mm-hmm.
is highest on the all-time box office list at number 12?
Is it Winter Soldier?
It is Black Panther.
Oh, that's so obvious. But Winter Soldier is still one of my favorites.
Agreed.
Yeah, it is Black Panther. That
It
makes
is
sense.
Black Panther.
That makes sense.
Number 5. You're from New York.
Should have gotten that one.
You're from New York. I don't know if we told anyone yet. You're from New York. What's the state animal of New York?
Black bear?
American beaver.
You win some, you lose
I was
some.
hoping you'd guess pigeons because I think it'd be funny if pigeons was the national animal.
Nah, I would have said rats.
Okay. Number 6 is another multiple choice question.
What am I, 0 for 5?
0 for 5.
Great.
That's okay. Again, I made these hard, so don't feel bad. I purposely make these hard. I want it to be a challenge.
I'm going to go 0 for 10, watch.
And to be fair, I wouldn't have known any of these without looking them up.
Okay,
So
cool.
I would also have been 0 for 5.
As I said, I didn't study for my midterms.
And this is a lesson, is what this is. You have to study for your midterms if you want to do well. Yeah. Number 6. Multiple choice.
Mm-hmm.
Against what team did Babe Ruth hit his first home run? The Chicago Cubs, the New York Yankees, the Chicago Federals, the Detroit Tigers. The Chicago Cubs, the New York Yankees,
Well, I know he
the
hit
Chicago Federals, Detroit Tigers.
Well, I know he hit his first home run with Boston, so it could have been against the Yankees. Can you say the third one again?
Yeah, the Cubs, Yankees, Federals, Tigers.
Oh, let's be ironic. Let's say the Yankees.
Correct. You should have known me well enough to know that I would put that in there
Yeah.
just because that's the answer.
Let's be ironic.
You're on the board.
Cool. Bet.
I've still not shut anyone out. My dream faded for another day.
Okay.
Number 7. You are Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan.
Yeah.
Marvel TV show.
We're
He gets nervous.
yeah, I'm nervous because I stopped watching at a certain point.
That's okay. You don't have to have seen all the way through for this.
Okay.
And it's going to be a guess anyway. How many times did Phil Coulson in any form die on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
Like physically die.
I will give you one minor, not hint, but clarification. He didn't have to stay dead for it to count as a death.
I'm going to say twice.
6 times. 6 times.
I don't remember it too well.
That's okay. That's a lot.
It is a
be
lot
fair.
to die.
It's not normal to guess 6 for that question.
It's not normal to die multiple times.
It is not. Yeah, hot take. Number 8. What's older? the original Yankee Stadium or sliced bread?
I'm going to say the original Yankee Stadium.
You're correct. You're on the board with 2 now. Yankee Stadium, 1923. Sliced bread, 1930.
I thought so.
Closer than I thought.
I for some reason, I thought that sliced bread was a Depression era thing.
Yeah, I mean, give or take. Number 9. We work in the Melton Student Center. What year did it open?
The Melton Student Center? As in when it was named the Melton?
Not when it was named. No, that's this year. I told you I made these hard.
I know, but I thought it was going to be a trick question.
What year did this building open?
2010.
2008.
Oh, so close.
Our producer was mouthing, I know this. And I was like, oh, she's going to tell him. But she didn't tell him.
I was like, tell me.
Number 10, no. Number 10. You mentioned that your mom is from Switzerland. We know this mountain range. We call this mountain range the Swiss Alps. What percentage of that mountain range is actually in Switzerland?
I want to say about 30%.
14%. So
I'm tied.
what we have now is I have good news and bad news. The good news is you are tied for second place.
That's fine.
The bad news is you will not win the trivia championship.
I do not care.
That's okay. I think you do care because I think everyone cares. After that,
I think our producer got easier questions.
I don't think so. I was ready for these lash outs. We'll call them when people don't get as many right. We'll call that a unique trivia performance, right?
Yeah.
You had good guesses. You gave it a real good try.
Yeah.
So we're gonna move on though to Let's Get Professional, where we talk about your job, what you do here, your experience here. So number 1 is coordinator for leadership. You work primarily with Emerge as a student organization. Talk about what you do with them.
Yeah, so myself and another coordinator, Hannah, we basically split the responsibilities of advising and supporting the students that run Emerge at Auburn leadership programs. So in any way, shape, or form, giving the opportunity for leadership to be experienced by all students at Auburn University. So whether that be through our phased programs, being Explore Spring, Spark, Transform, or through some of our other opportunities, being Leadership Institute, Discover Retreat, Leadership Lunch and Learns, whatever that experience may be, we want all students at Auburn to experience our programs and to understand leadership as non-positional and as a learning experience and as a growth opportunity to understand yourself and your how you work with others better.
Right, like for me, one of the most important things for people to know about leadership is that it's not a position. Like you don't have to hold a position to be a leader.
Like there are leadership positions,
Sure.
but that doesn't mean you are a good leader. Like there are plenty of examples that we've seen throughout history of people who hold positions but are not the best person suited for those positions.
Sure. What do you think the most important thing for leadership is? I know that's a big question from that's like your job. So you're probably like, I don't know, give me 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But if you were to boil it down to one thing, what do you think the most critical part of leadership is for someone?
For me, and this is also a part in the way that I showcase my leadership, it has to do with values congruence and consistency. So a big part of it for me is integrity and aligning your words and your actions, being true to your values and not necessarily saying one thing and then doing another. So there are a lot of leaders who are like, do as I say but not as I do, and I feel like that is poor. It is very poor leadership. So I think it has to do with values and values congruence.
That's for me. I've always respected the leaders and tried to be a leader that isn't going to ask people to do things that I'm not going to be willing to do myself. And those are also the leaders I find myself wanting to follow, because I'm like, well, if you're also willing to stay late or you're also willing to do the manual labor, I'm not going to complain about doing it too. And that, like, leading by example, I guess would be the very, very, very general way to say that.
Exactly.
In addition to kind of coordinating leadership programs, you also are kind of the person that coordinates the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Workgroup within student involvement. Talk a little bit about what that is and what we do with that.
Yeah, I would say, what we do in the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Workgroup is really try to find the best ways to promote not just diversity, equity, inclusion within our practices in student involvement as staff, but also push our students to think about what are the ways that they can promote diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout their organizations, and how can they make sure that their programs are actually made for everyone. Just like how we as staff want to make sure that, everyone feels comfortable coming into our space and everyone has, agency to be there. Everyone it's not just a numbers thing of diversity. We want them to also feel included and also know that our spaces can provide for every student. So not just for us as staff, but to think about how our student groups and our student organizations can also think similarly about their organization and the programs they're creating and the opportunities that they're creating for other students, and how they can actually reach all students and provide opportunities for all students and make sure that all students want or have the ability to be a part of those.
All right, so some different things. There's a website with a lot of different resources on it from a lot of different categories. There's also sessions that students come to and learn about kind of specialized topics.
Exactly. Yep.
And kind of grow from there. But one of the things I think that is great for faculty, staff, students, everybody is learning perspectives and things that they don't already know. And with that, I think, especially with diversity, equity, and inclusion, we call it DEI for short, so maybe we could say that now. I don't like using acronyms without defining them, but if we say DEI, we're saying diversity, equity, and inclusion. With DEI, a lot of things that people don't know can lead to misconceptions. What would you say is, or have you found to be kind of a common misconception about DEI, whether as concepts or as like formulating a work group? What are some misconceptions that you found? Yeah,
I would say for me, the common misconceptions are that, you can accomplish DEI, that it's checkbox mentality. And for us, I would say we try to, in the best ways possible, make sure that it's a growth process, meaning that it is never ending and that you always have something to learn and somewhere to grow within it. So I think that is one misconception. I think there's a lot that people think of in terms of, you mentioned perspective, and I would attach onto that life experiences. A lot of people think that their perspective is equivalent to truth. And instead of thinking about everyone's perspective being just that, their perspective and the culmination of their life experiences, and that everyone has different perspective, and that your truth can coexist with someone else's truth instead of your truth being triumphant over someone else's truth. And I think that when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, a lot of people see they see it as a zero-sum game. So like, in order for me to have space and for me to feel involved, or for me to hold space somewhere, someone else has to not hold space there, when you can both coexist.
So something I've seen with students who've gone to the sessions, and like myself and other staff members that go to sessions and discussion series, is learning to be okay having not known something and realizing like maybe there are some changes to the way I need to think about something, not because I was inherently trying to think that way, but because I just wasn't aware. So like, how do you go about, with you're working with students or staff, teaching people that like you don't know what you don't know, and trying to help them broaden what their perspective is? What have you found to be the best way to go about doing that? I
mean, I think you talked about it in terms of leading how you want others to lead, and showcasing what leadership looks like for others. So for me, it is, whether I'm facilitating a conversation or just having a conversation with someone about diversity, equity, and inclusion, is giving them examples of areas in which I don't know, and showcasing that even though I may have deeper levels or higher levels of understanding in a certain area, doesn't necessarily, I don't really like using the word expert, because I would like, expert is like equivalent to perfection, and I don't think of myself as perfect. Like, we're always constantly learning and growing. So creating spaces and opportunities for whether it be other staff, students, to think of themselves as constantly growing. I want to showcase that for them so that they can feel comfortable, admitting to things that they may not know, and understanding that they're not perfect and that they're constantly growing, so that there's vulnerability and there's authenticity in the conversation. And so it's not, you don't want the conversation to remain surface level. You always want it to go a little bit deeper. So if you're not authentic and if you're not vulnerable for your student or for another person, then you don't necessarily give them the permission to do the same.
And I think what you had said earlier, where there's not a destination, like there's not a finish point. I think explaining that to people, so like all of a sudden you kind of have permission to not be perfect because there's not like a final accomplishment step. So it's like, oh, well, there's just always room to grow. So wherever you are, there's room to grow, and wherever someone else is, there's room to grow. And I think that almost reframes it for people and makes it feel like, okay, maybe there are things I'm not perfect at right now, but it's because no one is, and you can't be.
Yeah.
And then it makes it more okay to then recognize some potential blind spots or biases that you may have.
Yeah, but it's easy to think checkbox mentality
Right.
because you're accomplishing something, and it's good to feel like you've accomplished something. It's not to say that you can't accomplish anything in diversity, equity, and inclusion work, but it's a step,
Right.
and continual steps will happen afterwards.
Right. So jumping out to, it can be about Emerge, it can be about DEI, it can be about just your job in general. What's been the biggest surprise or the most unexpected part of your job so far?
I think for me it was COVID related. I was very surprised with the adaptability of my students and of us as an office in certain regards. Just the level of adaptability. And our ability to shift and still make programs really successful regardless of the barriers. I think that was probably one of the biggest surprises. I think people are always resistant to change, but when you're forced to, we were forced to think out of the box and forced to think about ways that we could still be successful, and also thinking about what does success look like in this, and trying to break down what the past looked like in terms of success, but what is that new form of success, and how do we move forward from that? So I've been really surprised with what that looks like, and what we want that to look like in the future. And I think both us as an office and also the students that I work with have truly surprised me in that regard.
When I think conversations we've had as an office or different people within the office, like coming out of COVID, not that COVID is done, it's still there, but coming out of kind of COVID operations, if you go back to doing exactly what you did before, you didn't learn anything.
Yep.
So like, there's going to be differences, and things that we've learned to adjust this year are still going to be incorporated into future years that hopefully create some opportunities for students that maybe weren't getting them as much before. Those students who want to be involved but need to do it through a computer. And now we all clearly know how to make sure students can be involved through a computer if they need to be. So that's been cool to see.
Yeah, if you didn't know how to use Zoom before, you definitely know how to use it now.
Definitely know how to use Zoom now. Everyone's even gotten good at remembering to mute their mics and unmute their mics, and because everyone's forgetting that in the beginning, and that was always a good time. What's your favorite part of the job?
It's never a dull day. I feel like there's always something different happening each and every day, and I think that that in itself gives you opportunities to do new things each and every day, whether it's work with new partners across campus, always having new students join your programs and new perspectives to think about things. I think there's always a new opportunity to do something different, and even we may advise the same programs every single day, but we're not necessarily doing the same thing every single day. So I really do appreciate that about the job.
Who's your favorite coworker?
Do you want me to answer that question?
Nope. No, it's not going to go my way. No. Finish this sentence. And you can take it however you want to take it. It can be within your job, though.
Okay.
Next year will be a success if. Next year meaning next school year.
Yes. Next year will be a success if we're able to host retreats, because I've just like a part of my job has been trying to figure out or trying to coordinate leadership in the Leadership Institute, and I think next year will be a success, and I think for students to be able to experience what a retreat looks like. So I think next year will be a success if we can actually host retreats and host experiences for students to get those opportunities to like really delve deeper into some of those experiences. I think they're they're hungry for those types of opportunities.
Yeah, I almost expect there to be like a celebratory aspect of some of the in-person things that couldn't be done last year. That's almost gonna, I feel like everyone's gonna be like, okay, we're here now. And like, you're gonna be like, okay, but now we actually have to do the work too. But I think there's gonna be kind of a celebratory aspect to a lot of those in-person things. Last question in this segment. What is your best advice to a student wanting to pursue a career in higher education?
Oof. I would say there's no one right way to get into higher education. I mean, I had my background is in statistics, and yet I made the pivot into higher education. You know, everyone has a different story. I think I was talking with someone earlier today. You know, there seems to be at least one consistent theme, and is that we were all super involved, but even that shouldn't deter you from wanting to be a higher education professional. I think all it takes is really that drive to want to support the student experience and want to make that better for each and every student that attends any institution, and not just for specific students, but really trying to make sure that everyone's experience is the best that it can be.
I do think it's funny because you said like everyone seems to have been like I've been like everyone so far has been like I was that involved student like in a bunch of different things.
It seems to be like that's the consistent part.
But I think that's one of my pieces of advice for students is the involvement that you do outside of the class is a supplemental part of your education. And I do think you are losing opportunities to broaden your perspectives and broaden your education if you don't take advantage of those opportunities to be involved. It's also a great way to meet people, which is one of the other things you do at college and one of the other things that helps you broaden your perspective and learn about different worldviews. So I do think getting involved is important. But I do think it's funny you say everyone so far has been like, well, I was that involved student. It's like, what's that mean? I was involved in this and this and this, which also means we can help students with time management because you have to learn how to do that when you're in so many different things.
Exactly.
All right. So now that we've given the viewers a good idea of who you are, what you do, kind of your philosophies, I want to leave them with some food for thought. So it's time for our final segment. Quote me on that. We are each going to give people one of our favorite quotes, talk a little bit about why it speaks to us. It can be meaningful, funny, thought-provoking. No one's hit like all three of those yet because that's almost impossible. So challenge extended. Okay. But I'm going to go first. So it gives you a second to think about what you want to say. Mine, we talked about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. earlier. It's one of my favorite quotes from that show. The steps you take don't have to be big. They just need to take you in the right direction.
Oh.
You can quote me on that. I love that because with a lot of my...
Was that Fitz?
That was Simmons who said that.
So close.
It's like they're the same person.
They are basically the same person.
But what I love about that one is I think the students that I work with a lot of time tend to focus on the result. And when they have a new idea, they think this is what it can be. But instead, I sometimes maybe use that quote or use something similar to say, like, focus on just taking like a little step of progress every day. Because it's the little steps you take are going to take care of the result. And it's kind of my way of telling them, focus on the process. The result takes care of itself.
Yeah.
If you're focused on the end result, you're going to miss stuff that's little along the way in the process. So like focus on the process and the result's going to be good if the process is good. And I just like the way that quote says that in a much more concise way than I can say it by rambling over and over and over again. So that's mine. Quote me on that. What's yours?
Okay. It's one that I use all the time. The best apology is changed behavior. And I think it doesn't necessarily have to be an apology. I think you can just think about it in terms of change. I talk about this with students all the time. If you are wanting to, if there is feedback that you're getting about a program, or if someone is giving you a piece of advice in an area in which to grow in, the only way to showcase that you're actually utilizing that information is to change your behavior. So what are you doing to change? Like what can you point to that is actually indicating a change in behavior or a change in your program that is taking into account that feedback or the want to change? Because and then to go back to the quote, the best apology is changed behavior. If you're going to apologize for something, you are taking ownership of and responsibility of bad behavior or actions or like words, whatever. But what are you doing to actually change it? So I tell this to people all the time who apologize. Like, you shouldn't be apologizing unless you're going to change the behavior afterwards, because then it's worthless at that point.
Right. It's talk the talk and then walk the walk.
Mm-hmm.
Or do both of them.
Just like we're talking about values congruence.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to say something, do something.
Do something. All right. So say it one more time as I time it perfectly with your sip of water.
Mm-hmm. The best apology is change behavior.
And you can quote him on that. All right, Alonzo, thanks so much for joining us. I think the viewers enjoy getting to know more about you, what you do, your path kind of to student involvement, what you do with students here. Until next time, I'm Billy Ferris, and this has been Access Involvement, where discovering your path is as easy as cracking open a peanut shell with a sledgehammer.